In the labyrinthine corridors of human relationships, few bonds are as potent and as burdensome as those formed within the crucible of the family. For many, this connection serves as a sanctuary, a bastion of support against the vicissitudes of existence. Yet, there exists no universal harmony within the symphony of familial ties. When these connections become oppressive or toxic, they may more closely resemble shackles than harbors, ensnaring the individual in a web of despair and stifling the pursuit of their own will to flourish. To embark upon a disquisition on severing ties with a toxic family is to grapple with one of the gravest dilemmas of human existence. Family, as an institution, is often enshrined with an almost sacrosanct reverence, cloaked in moral obligation and societal expectation. Yet I, ever the iconoclast, would have us question such blind allegiance. For I saw the world as fundamentally rooted in suffering, perpetuated by the ceaseless striving of the will, and often exacerbated by the proximity of those who ought to nurture rather than harm. To understand the toxicity within familial bonds, one must first acknowledge the essence of the human condition. Life is not an arena of unalloyed happiness, but a stage upon which the endless striving of the will, that primordial, insatiable force, plays out. This striving brings forth conflict and suffering, especially in close quarters, where the faults and failures of individuals are magnified. The family, then, becomes a microcosm of the broader existential struggle, a crucible where personalities clash and egos vie for dominance. When familial relationships become toxic, they no longer serve their intended purpose of mutual support and growth. Instead, they degenerate into cycles of manipulation, guilt, and harm, mirroring the darker aspects of the human will. The toxic family member, much like the malignant elements of the world, can embody porcupine dilemma. In their attempts to draw close, they inflict pain, yet distance breeds its own agony. The individual is left in a state of perpetual discomfort, torn between the fear of isolation and the torment of proximity. The decision to sever ties with such a family, to reject the bonds of blood for the sake of personal freedom, is a profound act of self-assertion. It is, in essence, a rebellion against the tyranny of the collective will that seeks to subjugate the individual's autonomy. Cutting ties with a toxic family is not merely an act of abandonment, but a deliberate choice to prioritize one's well-being and growth. It requires the courage to confront the fear of societal judgment and the internalized guilt that often accompanies such a decision. My advocacy for the cultivation of solitude and introspection becomes particularly pertinent here. I recognize that true freedom is found not in the validation of others, but in the serenity of one's own mind. By stepping away from toxic familial influences, the individual embarks on a journey toward this inner sanctuary. Yet, this severance is not without its own pangs of suffering. The bonds of family, even when fraught with toxicity, are often deeply ingrained, interwoven with memories, traditions, and shared experiences. The act of cutting these ties may feel akin to amputating a limb, a painful but sometimes necessary procedure to preserve the health of the whole. My perspective on suffering as an inevitable companion to life provides a sobering yet empowering framework for navigating this pain. To suffer is to exist. To suffer for the sake of one's liberation is to affirm one's existence as an autonomous being. Moreover, my emphasis on compassion and the interconnectedness of all beings offers a counterbalance to the starkness of severance. While cutting ties may be necessary, it need not be an act of malice or hatred. Rather, it can be undertaken with a sense of compassion, both for oneself and for those who perpetuate toxicity. Recognizing that the latter are often themselves ensnared by their own suffering and limitations can temper the bitterness of separation with a measure of understanding. In navigating the aftermath of such a decision, the individual is confronted with the task of reconstructing their identity and support system. My celebration of art, philosophy, and the natural world as refuges from the turmoil of existence becomes invaluable. By immersing oneself in these higher pursuits, one can find solace and meaning beyond the confines of familial relationships. The beauty of a symphony, the profundity of a philosophical text, or the tranquility of a forest glade can serve as antidotes to the anguish of estrangement. Ultimately, the act of cutting ties with a toxic family is a manifestation of the individual's will to live authentically. It is an assertion of the primacy of one's own well-being over the expectations and demands of others. My philosophy, with its unflinching acknowledgment of life's hardships and its reverence for the sanctity of the individual's inner world, provides a profound validation of this choice. In severing the bonds that bind them to suffering, the individual affirms their freedom and embarks on a path toward a more harmonious existence, one that aligns with the true nature of their will. Thus, while the severance of toxic familial ties is fraught with pain and complexity, it is also an act of profound courage and self-respect. It is a journey through the dark forests of guilt and societal disapproval, guided by the light of one's own will to thrive.